we asked what adjectives people most associated with named companies, words like heartless, greedy, cynical and ruthless were what came to mind for the likes of Coca-Cola and Marlboro. Naomi Klein's new best-selling book, No Logo, is a blistering critique of multinationals like Nike and a rallying call for the anti-capitalist organizations like Reclaim the Streets. For example, she writes that a different agenda has taken hold, one that embraces globalization but seeks to wrest it from the grasp of multinationals. Ethical shareholders, cultural jammers, street reclaimers, muck union organizers, human rights activists, school logo fighters, and internet corporate watchdogs are at the early stages of demanding a citizen-centered alternative to the international rule of brands. That demand is to build a resistance that is as global and as capable of coordinated action as the multinational corporations that it seeks to subvert. Whether you agree with Klein's radical viewpoint or not, it is clear that citizens in the developed economies are becoming more ethical in their consumer choices and are increasingly concerned about issues like third world trade and working conditions. It is my view that perceptions of a company's behaviour in the wider areas of environmental stewardship, fair employment conditions, and actively working to alleviate the ravages of the global market economy will become a critical part of brand imagery and hence profitability in the future. For this reason, companies across the world, and multinationals in particular, will need to be constantly aware of their responsibilities, and nowhere more so than in those relating to employment practices. There's an irony here. On the one hand, consumers' demands for instantaneous, 24-hour service are helping to create some of the work-related problems and stresses that they, on the other hand, criticize companies for. Balancing these schizophrenic demands of consumers does present problems, although the use of new technologies might be able to help. Related to this is a very specific application and opportunity arising from the development of the 24-hour society. Thanks to global telecommunications capabilities and the possibilities of internet-based technology, employees in one time zone can service customers in another without enduring unsociable working hours. For example, nighttime customer services calls in Europe could be answered by those working in the afternoon or early evening in Brazil, Argentina or Mexico. Beyond this, what else does this mean for the world of work? I believe that this new technological, knowledge-based, global 24-hour society will have profound implications for employers and employees alike. The direct impact of technology and globalization will drive not only the demand for knowledge workers, but also the need for flexibility in working practices. This will happen in a number of ways. The concept of a fixed place of work will become increasingly redundant as workers hot desk, work on the move, at other sites or from home. Workers of all persuasions will be expected to work more flexible but not necessarily longer hours. More jobs will be outsourced to contract companies or contract employees, and in a global economy, more often, to those in different countries and continents. As predicted by Paul Krugman of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, the number of people employed in manufacturing and manual work will continue to decline as more production and maintenance is automated. Furthermore, skilled physical workers like plumbers, gardeners and electricians will be valued and able to command good remuneration. Generally, there will be a perception that job security has declined. All this has a number of implications. The enhanced value of knowledge, skills and flexibility will mean that those workers who possess such attributes will be able to command a premium in terms of both pay and working conditions. This in turn may help create a global market for certain skilled employees. Some countries, and in particular those with flat or declining populations like Spain, Germany, Italy and Japan, may need the help of experienced and talented professionals and technicians from other countries. Locator services which match people's skills with organisations' need are likely to grow, possibly on an international basis. In other words, an increase in international professional migration, certainly built around an internet-based offer. This focus on knowledge and skills will place a greater emphasis on education and the accumulation of intellectual capital. It will be recognised that to keep up and keep competitive, people will need to engage in a programme of lifetime learning. Those excluded from access to education, both at the start of their life and through it, will suffer disproportionately. The Prime Minister of my own country, Britain, Tony Blair, is surely right when he says that the three priorities in the new economy are education, education, education. The nature of the knowledge economy will place an increased focus on talent, creative and analytic ability. More people will experience the rewards and pressures that those in the creative industries have traditionally faced. In that sense, perhaps the best contemporary model for what many knowledge workers may encounter in the future is Hollywood, or what one might refer to as the Hollywoodization of work. Consider the following aspects about life in Hollywood that could also, arguably, apply to the emerging workplace. It's about who you know as much as what you know. Talent is the critical issue, judged on and rewarded accordingly. There is a need and a drive to constantly reinvent or reposition yourself. You're only as good as your last film. Image is as important as reality. Work is project-related. Pay is project-related. Fame is everything, and fame can be more important than content. Charles Ledbetter had made a similar point in his recent book, Living on Thin Air. Imagine working in the film business, moving from film to film, crew to crew, set to set, a success one month and a flop the next. A progress in which you are only as good as your last project. Work may be like that for many more of us in the next decade. At times fun and rewarding, but iterant and punctuated by bouts of insecurity. This has implications for employers and employees alike. Employers will need to encourage, pamper and nurture their best talent, as might occur with a fragile star in Hollywood. Employees, on the other hand, will need increasingly to consider their own personal employment brand. Perhaps the most important development will be the growing recognition among many workers that they need to take control of their own career. No longer being able to rely on a paternalistic employer offering a job for life, workers will need to create and manage their own personal employment brand. Self-motivation will be crucial. Networking will be a recognised part of brand management. Skills will need replenishment. Reinvention of the brand, possibly in completely different careers, may be required from time to time. This won't apply to all workers, of course. But for the increasing number of knowledge workers, and the star talent particularly, management of the personal brand is likely to become more important. Some commentators have highlighted the potential pitfalls of such a world. Richard Sennett, for example, in his highly stimulating and very readable book, The Corrosion of Character, The Personal Consequences of Work in the New Capitalism, argues that the insecure, highly mobile nature of modern work, that he believes is an inevitable trend, is undermining people's emotional and psychological well-being. But I wonder whether this is right. Of course, there is bound to be uncertainty as some people change from one model of employment, structured, ordered, job for life, to a completely different one, cellular, networked, flexible, project-based. This may well cause some to reflect on how different the world of work is to that of their parents. Sennett's main methodological tool is to compare the experiences and emotions of two generations of a family. But evidence from work that we have conducted for Britain's 24-hour bank, First Direct, suggests that people are beginning to accept a greater responsibility for their own destiny and seem quite happy about it too. Around 6 out of 10 current and future workers agree that they often dream of doing something completely different with their life. More dramatically, 40% expect to start their own business at some point, rising to 50% for people aged under 25. As people reflect on their destiny at work and their own influence on it, so they may well also consider the wider issue of the position of work in their lives. Already, we're detecting a broadly based increase in interest in getting the right balance between work and other aspects of life. This is not only balancing work with family, but also with other interests in life, like leisure pursuits. All this presents challenges to employers too. New management skills will be required to manage the new working environment of creative talent, precious in both senses of the word. Teams composed of internal and external workers, varied remuneration packages, and diverse and flexible workplaces. Employers also need to consider how they can help their workers achieve a better work-life balance. In the knowledge society of the future, productivity will be about as much about stroking precious human resources as exploiting human capital. Output will be maximised by encouraging workers to seek a fulfilling balance to their lives, sensible working hours, stable family relationships, and stimulating and diverse leisure activities. Good management has always done this, but in the emerging economy, and one with 24-hour demands, this will be all the more important and will ultimately prove to be competitively advantageous. More than anything, companies will need to come to terms with the new frame of mind that they themselves have helped to promulgate. Businesses are starting to realise that the downside of downsizing and delayering is that employees have bought the message. They know that they can no longer rely on a job for life and are, it seems, starting to take control of their own destiny. With no loyalty to the company, employee retention rather than flexibility to hire and fire becomes the key issue for employers, and especially so in knowledge-centred companies. In some recent research we have carried out, one human resources director of an American multinational made the point forcefully: we want people to join us for life. We don't guarantee it, of course, but employee retention is critical to us. The trouble is the employees, don't buy it. They need persuading. Perhaps at last, organisations are starting to realise that employees really are their most important asset. For all the current talk about customer-focused companies, perhaps being an employee-focused company will be seen as being of equal and critical importance in the future. The irony of it all, as I suggested earlier, is that in the 24-hour society of the future, the increasingly demanding customer is likely to place more demands and pressures on employees. Balancing the potentially contrasting needs of employees and customers will be one of the great organisational challenges of the 21st century. Globalised time schedules relating to different time zones around the globe and globalised work relating to productive activity performed from different regions of the world threaten to generate greater stress and strain to our physical and mental well-being. It is thus imperative that we all work towards solutions that minimise these effects and maximise the pleasure of global human interaction. The 24-hour society is here to stay. Let us all make sure it works to our benefit and satisfaction. Thank you.
You're the one who's going to get most of the questions. Thank you, Ms. Graham. Let us begin the first question and answer session. We will try to answer as many questions as possible. Therefore, we ask that only one question be asked per phone call, and that these questions be as brief as possible. You may call the studio directly at the numbers or facts which appear on your screen. We remind you to make your phone calls at a distance from the monitor to avoid feedback. Our first question is coming from Cuba. It is from the Servicios de Información del Transporte, CITRANS, en La Habana, Cuba.
Muy buenos días. morning. My question is the following. Just as we are all immersed in this globalization process where everything is becoming globalized, not only economy, but communication, time, we see that time is also being globalized. So could you please tell us something about how our entrepreneurs can actually influence in an optimal way in this process?
Thank you. That's a great question. I think it's a very good point to think that we're not just talking about global corporations here benefiting from the 24-hour society. We're also talking about individuals and small businesses, entrepreneurs in particular. One of the obvious ways that entrepreneurs and small businesses can turn the 24-hour society around really to their advantage is by using new technology. Because the 24-hour society doesn't mean that somebody has to be in the shop all the time. It might mean that you're open to the world at all the time. And that can be by having a dedicated telephone helpline, or simply by having a website that puts your company image and mission and contact, crucially, open to the whole world. I think that's really probably the main way.
Our next question is from Mexico. It is from the Instituto Politécnico Nacional de Educación Continua in Mexico City, Mexico.
Thank you very much. Greetings to both of you, all of you. And this is our question. What decisions has the British government taken and the farmers in order to diminish the impact of all the production costs vis-a-vis the international competition? Is there a chance for changing crops or and the other question is, what are the non-political reasons that make the people to exclude from the global market certain productions? For instance, the case of the tuna in Mexico. Thank you very much.
Okay, so English agriculture and tuna in
Absolutely.
Mexico.
Yeah, a good combination. As far as the UK government is concerned and the dispute with the farmers at the moment, I know that that's an ongoing discussion. It's a very good example of how globalization has worked against one sector in one sense, because given differential levels of subsidies from one country to the other, we have the absurd situation in the UK whereby produce which is made in the UK is actually more expensive to produce than produce which is imported from other countries. That dispute is still happening. I don't know what the outcome will be, but I know there's a lot of bitterness and unhappiness about it. As for the tuna, I mean, I think I don't know details about this case. I'm sorry, but I think it's really all part of the same question. This is something which is being sorted out at the moment. But these are teething problems, I think, of the global economy, where you've got different governments and different authorities imposing different rules. Surely in the next few years, I'm hoping that plans and taxes and subsidies and regulation are going to be harmonized to enable the smooth functioning of these global businesses.
Thank you. Again, we have a question from Mexico. It's from La Universidad Tecnológica de Tecamachalco, in Puebla, Mexico.
Good morning. Greetings to all of you. Our question is, how can you connect to internet from a mobile phone? What would be the main disadvantages, and how does this affect the economy? I don't know what economy, but...
Yeah, that's a great question. There are a number of mobile phones on the market at the moment which can simply connect themselves up to the internet, which function as if they were modems, which have that capability in them already. What kind of phones? Ask me the model numbers. I'm afraid I don't know. However, you can be sure that at the moment they're on the more expensive end of the market. But what it means, the advantages, of course, is that they bypass any need for the infrastructure. You don't need to have a physical telephone line. What are the disadvantages? Well, at the moment, they can be quite slow and they can be quite costly. So they're really only used by people who really are on the move. If you need to get your emails while you're sitting in a taxi cab, for example, or for those areas which literally do not have physical telephone lines. As for how this is going to affect the economy, well, I can give one cynical answer, and that is it will hugely affect the telecommunications market, because we'll be buying more of these phones as they get more and more efficient and as their prices of production come down. I think it's going to just free up areas of work. It's going to mean that we can fit bits of work into other times of the day. It's going to allow people to work on the move and be more flexible. And all of these things, I think, are just going to allow for knowledge workers and those who don't rely on necessarily being in a fixed building to do their business to proliferate and to grow in strength.
Next, we have a question from the Dominican Republic. It is from the Centro de Gestión e Investigación in Santo Domingo in the Dominican Republic.
Greetings from Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic. It is very interesting to hear all your ideas on this program, and I wanted to ask you the following, and this is regarding the distribution channels. As a consequence of the development of this new technology in this new economy, we need to fill some gaps in order that these virtual shops can also provide through specialized enterprises, and also provided that the governments allow for this, some mechanism for the quality of the products and the arrival of products to be on time and punctual and quality-wise also. What are the steps taken in order to guarantee quality of this kind of service and product?
Yes, you're absolutely right. Distribution is the key issue. If this is going to work, it's going to be on the back of people trusting that the goods that they order arrive, and they arrive in good quality. In the UK, at least, and from my experience, there is a level of lack of trust initially when people use the new media to order things. But hey, it's in many instances just like ordering from a catalogue, and people have been doing that for generations. One of the challenges facing everybody in the whole retail industry is that consumers are increasingly demanding and sophisticated. Now, my time is precious, and I don't care about your time. So if I order something over the internet, I want it to come when I want it to come, not when you as a company want to send it to me. So increasingly, companies are focusing their offer around offering delivery times to suit the customer, with not just saying I'm going to deliver it to you on the morning of such and such a date, but saying I will deliver it to you between 10:30 and 11:30. That's really how it's going to happen. And the quality of goods, well, that has to be sorted out by the companies, and competition really, I think, will prevail there.
Thank you for your calls. During our next module, Ms. Wendee Mason will explore the characteristics of the new 24-hour organization.